There are horrors in the darkness between stars that defy comprehension, nightmares that cross the void between galaxies, driven by a hunger so absolute that it eclipses all other motivations. Among the countless terrors that plague the Imperium of man in the 41st millennium, few inspire the particular dread that accompanies the arrival of the Tyranids. These are not conquerors seeking glory or tribute. They are not zealots fighting for ideology or faith. They are devourers, pure and simple, and every world they touch becomes a tomb of scoured rock and stolen life. But what happens when this ultimate predator sets its countless eyes upon a world of steel and machine? When the great devourer turns its attention to the sacred forge worlds of the Adeptus Mechanicus. These are not simple agricultural planets, ripe with biomass, nor teeming hive cities whose populations number in the trillions. Forge worlds are bastions of ancient technology, defended by weapons that can crack continents and guarded by warrior machines that stride through battlefields like walking fortresses. They are the beating hearts of the Imperium's war machine, the only places in the galaxy where the sacred rites of construction can birth tanks, ships, and weapons of unimaginable power. The consumption of a forge world by the Tyranids is not merely a military engagement. It is a clash between two fundamentally incompatible forms of existence. On one side stands the Mechanicus, devoted to the preservation and worship of technology, believing that knowledge itself is sacred and that every machine contains a fragment of the divine. On the other stands the hive mind, an alien intelligence so vast and so utterly other that it exists beyond the boundaries of individual consciousness, viewing all matter, organic and inorganic alike, as nothing more than raw material waiting to be consumed and repurposed. This is the story of what occurs when these two forces collide. It is a tale told across dozens of worlds, from Architry's fall to Hive Fleet Harbinger to the desperate defenses mounted on forge worlds throughout the galaxy. It is a story of hubris and desperation, of ancient machinery pitted against evolutionary perfection, of tech priests who believed their worlds of steel would prove inedible only to discover that the Tyranids hunger for more than simple flesh. The consumption of a forge world unfolds across weeks or months, each phase more horrific than the last. It begins with whispers and shadows, with things that should not be seen moving through the underhives and machine warrens. It accelerates into open war, where the sky itself becomes a living thing and the very air turns toxic with alien spores. It culminates in total dissolution, where capillary towers kilometers high pump the liquefied remains of an entire civilization into orbit, feeding the bioships that hang in the darkness like vast and terrible gods. To understand this process is to glimpse one of the Imperium's darkest nightmares made manifest. It is to witness the methodical dismantling of worlds that have stood for 10,000 years, to see sacred forges reduced to biological slurry, and to comprehend the terrible truth that even humanity's mightiest bastions are nothing more than future sustenance for the swarm. The nature of forge worlds, bastions of the machine, God. Before we can truly understand what transpires when Tyranids descend upon a forge world, we must first comprehend what makes these planets unique in the vast tapestry of imperial civilization. Forge worlds are not merely industrial centers or manufacturing hubs, though they serve these functions with unmatched efficiency. They are living monuments to humanity's technological past, present, and precarious future. Each one a fortress cathedral, where the line between religion and engineering has long since blurred into irrelevance. Picture a world where the natural landscape has been buried beneath millennia of construction, where mountains are not peaks of stone, but towering manufactoria that scrape the polluted sky, where valleys have been filled with smelting facilities the size of cities, and where the oceans have been drained to make room for yet more production centers. The atmosphere of a typical forge world is thick with industrial runoff, heavy metals suspended in clouds of toxic vapor that would kill an unaugmented human in minutes. The very ground rumbles with the constant operation of machinery buried kilometers deep, massive forge temples where weapons are born in ceremonies that blend the sacred with the mechanical in ways outsiders find deeply unsettling. The population of a forge world is unlike any other in the Imperium. The bulk consists of menials, workers whose entire existence revolves around a single task they will perform from birth to death. Many have been augmented with cybernetics, their bodies modified to better serve their function. Perhaps a forge worker has replaced their eyes with photoreceptors that can withstand the glare of molten adamantium. Maybe an assembly line operator has traded their arms for specialized manipulator appendages that can work without rest or error. These modifications are not seen as degradation, but as sacred improvement, bringing the flesh closer to the purity of the machine. Above the menials stand the Skitarii, the cybernetic warriors of the Mechanicus. These are soldiers who have undergone such extensive augmentation that calling them human requires a generous interpretation of the term. Their bodies are marvels of biomechanical engineering, featuring servo-enhanced limbs that can march for months without rest, replacement organs that function with mechanical precision, and weapons integrated directly into their nervous systems. A Skitarii ranger might have optical augmentations that allow them to identify targets at ranges that would make an Imperial Guard sniper weep with envy. A Vanguard warrior might be so heavily modified that they exude lethal radiation simply by existing, their very presence enough to poison the battlefield. Then come the battle servitors, the combat automata that blur the line between weapon and soldier. These grotesque creations were once human, or at least started that way, before their minds were wiped and their bodies rebuilt around weapon systems too heavy for normal troops to carry. A single battle servitor might mount plasma cannons where arms once grew, or sport heavy bolters grafted directly to its chassis. They feel no pain, know no fear, and require no motivation beyond the electronic impulses that drive them forward. The true rulers of any forge world are the tech priests of the Adeptus Mechanicus. These are the keepers of sacred knowledge, the high priests of the machine god, individuals who have replaced so much of their original biology with augmentation that determining where human ends and machine begins is an exercise in futility. An enginseer might sport mechanical tentacles called mechadendrites that allow them to interface directly with machinery. A magos might have replaced their brain with cogitator arrays that process information at speeds impossible for organic thought. The highest-ranking tech priests, the archmagui who rule entire forge worlds, are often more mechanical than biological, their consciousness spread across vast networks of machinery, their thoughts measured in terabytes rather than synapses. Defending these worlds are weapons that represent the pinnacle of Imperial military technology, orbital defense platforms capable of cracking battleships with single volleys, ground-based macro cannons that can launch projectiles beyond the atmosphere, void shield generators that create bubbles of reality-warping energy, capable of deflecting all but the most catastrophic attacks. And towering above all other defenses, literally and figuratively, are the Titans. These god machines are the most powerful weapons the Imperium can field outside of fleet-level assets. The smallest, the Warhound Scout Titans, stand 20 meters tall and mount weapons that can level city blocks. Reaver Battle Titans tower 40 meters into the sky and carry armaments that qualify as strategic weapons. Warlord Titans, the mainline battle units of the Titan legions, reach heights of 33 meters and mount enough firepower to annihilate armies. And in the deepest, most sacred forge veins of the mightiest forge worlds stand the Imperator-class Emperor Titans, god machines so massive they rise 55 meters or more into the sky. Mobile fortresses that carry enough weapons to qualify as walking armies unto themselves. Each Titan is not merely a machine but a revered artifact, housing a machine spirit of formidable power and temperament. These mechanical intelligences are ancient and often cantankerous, requiring specific rituals and rites to function properly. The princeps who command these war engines undergo neural bonding that, links their consciousness directly to their titan, a merger of mind and machine that is as sacred as it is dangerous. The Moderati who support them manage individual weapon systems and locomotive functions, while entire tech priest teams maintain and propitiate the machine spirits that animate these colossal constructs. The Forge worlds are not merely defended, they are fortified to a degree that makes siege warfare nightmarish even to contemplate. Their industrial capacity means they can produce ammunition, vehicles, and weapons at rates that would sustain centuries of continuous warfare. Their populations include millions or even billions of Skitarii warriors. Their arsenals contain weapons dating back to the dark age of technology, irreplaceable artifacts kept in sacred vaults and deployed only in the most dire circumstances. All of this makes a Forge world seem impregnable, a fortress planet where any invader would dash themselves against defenses that have repelled Orc, Geekis, Chaos incursions, and Eldar raids. The tech priests know their worlds are valuable, know they are targets, and have prepared accordingly. They have run the calculations, assessed the probabilities, and concluded that their defenses are more than adequate to repel any conventional attack. But the Tyranids are not conventional attackers, and in their mathematical certainty, the tech priests of many Forge worlds have made a catastrophic miscalculation. They have assumed that because their worlds contain less traditional biomass than agricultural or hive worlds, they will be of lesser interest to the hive fleets. They have believed that the metal and machinery that makes up the bulk of their planetary mass will prove inedible to creatures that evolve to consume organic matter. They could not have been more wrong. The first warnings: shadows in the machine warrens. The consumption of a Forge world begins long before the first bioship enters orbit, long before the first mycetic spore crashes into the surface, long before any tech priest realizes their world has been marked for death. It begins with infiltration, with subtle signs that something is profoundly wrong in the deep places beneath the manufactoria, in the forgotten maintenance tunnels and abandoned mine workings that honeycomb every Forge world like the burrows of some vast insect. The vanguard organisms of a Tyranid hive fleet are purpose-grown for stealth and independence. Unlike the endless swarms of termagants and hormagaunts that will come later, these creatures possess a degree of autonomy that allows them to operate far from the hive mind's direct control. They are scouts, spies, and saboteurs, and they move through the shadows with a patience that seems almost unnatural for creatures whose species is defined by insatiable hunger. Lictors are among the first to arrive. These creatures are evolution's answer to the question of what a perfect predator looks like. Standing perhaps 2.5 meters tall, when upright but moving in a disturbing, loping gait that keeps their bodies low and their profiles minimal, lictors possess chameleonic scales that can render them nearly invisible against any background. Their 6 limbs end in scything talons, sharp enough to slice through ceramite, and their heads bristle with sensory organs that can detect heat, movement, electromagnetic emissions, and scents that no human nose could ever perceive. A lictor, infiltrating a Forge world, moves through the underworks with supernatural patience. It might spend weeks simply observing, learning the patterns of patrol routes, identifying weaknesses in security, locating individuals who would not be missed. These creatures possess an intelligence that is easy to underestimate, a cunning that allows them to use the environment to their advantage in ways that demonstrate clear understanding of cause and effect. Consider the fate of menial designate Theta 939 on the Forge world of Griffon 4, in the years before that world's eventual fall. Theta 939 was a waste reclamation worker whose duties took him into the oldest parts of the Forge complexes, areas that had been continuously expanded for 6,000 years, and where the original layout had been lost to time and poor record-keeping. When he failed to return from a routine inspection, his overseers noted his absence, but did not immediately investigate. Menials die from industrial accidents, with depressing regularity on Forge worlds, and one missing worker hardly warranted the diversion of resources needed for a full search. What they did not know was that Theta 939 had been taken alive, paralyzed by lictor toxins, and dragged deep into the abandoned sections where even servitor patrols no longer ventured. There, in the darkness and forgotten places, the lictor performed a form of vivisection, its actions driven by instincts encoded in its very genes. It examined Theta 939's augmentations with something approaching curiosity, testing how the cybernetics interfaced with biological systems, learning the layout of human anatomy as modified by Mechanicus surgery. When it finally killed him, the lictor consumed strategic portions of his flesh, ingesting not merely nutrition, but information. The Tyranid digestive system is not simply a means of breaking down matter for energy. It is a sophisticated biological laboratory capable of extracting genetic information from prey, analyzing that data, and transmitting it back to the hive mind for incorporation into future organisms. From Theta 939's body, the hive mind learned about the cybernetic modifications common to Mechanicus menials, about the chemical composition of Forge world atmospheres, about the electromagnetic spectrum in which servitors communicated. But more than this, the lictor learned Theta 939's routines, his access codes, his knowledge of the underwork layout. In a display of adaptability that would horrify any witness, the creature began to move through the tunnels with purpose, following routes it had extracted from its victims' memories, avoiding security measures it knew about through consumed knowledge. As the weeks passed, more menials vanished. The pattern was subtle enough that it took months before anyone noticed the uptick in disappearances was statistically significant. By that time, a dozen lictors had infiltrated the deepest levels of the Forge complexes, establishing a network of lurking horrors that communicated through pheromone trails and infrasonic vibrations. They were patient because patience served their purpose. They were waiting for something, preparing the ground for an invasion that would not arrive for months or even years. Genestealers represent an even more insidious form of infiltration. These creatures are not merely predators. They are infection vectors, designed to subvert entire populations from within. A genestealer is a nightmare made flesh, standing roughly human height, but possessing 4 arms tipped with claws that can rend plasteel, a chitinous hide tough enough to deflect small arms fire, and a mouth filled with an extensible tongue that is the key to their true horror. When a genestealer attacks a human, it does not always kill. Sometimes, it performs what the Ordo Xenos has termed the genestealer's kiss, a deceptively innocuous name for a process of genetic subversion. The creature's tongue injects a packet of genetic material directly into the victim's body, microscopic organisms that immediately begin rewriting the host's DNA at the cellular level. The victim survives, often unaware that anything has happened beyond a brief blackout or feeling of disorientation. They return to their duties, perhaps troubled by strange dreams but showing no obvious signs of infection. But when they eventually have children, those offspring are hybrids, blending human and Tyranid genetic material in ratios that vary depending on which generation of infection they represent. First-generation hybrids are obvious abominations, grotesque combinations of human and alien features that must be hidden away in the depths. But with each successive generation, the human features become more prominent, even as the Tyranid genetics lurk beneath the surface. By the 3rd or 4th generation, genestealer hybrids can pass for human in all but the closest inspection, perhaps showing only slightly unusual coloration or an odd extra flexibility in their joints. These hybrids form genestealer cults, secret societies that worship the alien patriarch that infected their original progenitor, waiting with fanatic devotion for the arrival of the Star Children who will lift them up to glorious transformation. They do not understand that they are bait, psychic beacons that burn in the warp like signal fires, calling the hive fleet home. They do not comprehend that they and their families will be among the first to be consumed when the fleet arrives, treated no differently than any other biomass by a hive mind that views them as useful tools rather than converts or allies. On a Forge world, Genestealer cults face unique challenges and opportunities. The rigid hierarchy of Mechanicus society makes it difficult for outsiders to advance or move between social strata, but it also means that questioning the appearance or behavior of one's fellow workers is discouraged. The focus on duty and function over individual identity can allow hybrids to hide in plain sight, especially in the teeming masses of menial workers, where individual identity is already subsumed into collective labor. Moreover, many Forge worlds include populations of baseline humans who service the Mechanicus without undergoing extensive augmentation themselves. These are the food preparers, the textile workers, the minor merchants and service providers who support the augmented warriors and tech priests. Among these populations, a Genestealer cult can grow for generations, each cycle bringing the faithful closer to the day of the ascension. The cult works in secret, holding meetings in abandoned sections of the underworks, conducting strange rituals that blend imperial faith with alien worship in ways that would see them burned as heretics if discovered. They recruit carefully, targeting the disaffected, the overlooked, those who have been ground down by the brutal efficiency of Forge world life and hunger for something that offers meaning beyond endless labor. And all the while, they sabotage. Carefully, slowly, a minor adjustment to a production line that will not cause problems for months. A small corruption of data in an archive that will go unnoticed until someone needs that specific information. The introduction of minor flaws in the manufacture of weapons or armor that will not fail until they are put under stress in actual combat. The cult members do not even fully understand why they are compelled to commit these acts of sabotage. They believe they are clearing the way for the salvation their alien gods will bring, preparing their world for transformation. In truth, they are weakening the defenses, creating vulnerabilities that the hive mind will exploit when the time comes. Every corrupted weapons shipment, every compromised security protocol, every act of minor sabotage is data fed back to the hive fleet through the psychic link the Patriarch maintains with its distant masters. The hive mind is patient, willing to spend years or even decades infiltrating a world, if it means the eventual conquest will be easier and less costly in terms of lost bioforms. As the infiltration phase continues, stranger things begin to occur. Servitors malfunction in ways that should not be possible, their machine spirits becoming erratic for no discernible reason. This is the effect of the shadow in the warp, the psychic pressure wave that precedes any major hive fleet. It disrupts the Imperium in ways that interfere with everything from astropathic communication to the machine, spirits that animate the Mechanicus' sacred technology. Tech priests notice these anomalies, but often misdiagnose them. A servitor going rogue is blamed on faulty maintenance or accumulated corruption in its logic engines. Communication difficulties are attributed to unusual solar activity or warp storms. The subtle wrongness that permeates the Forge complexes is explained away through the comfortable lens of understood problems, because the alternative, that something alien and incomprehensible is approaching, is too terrible to confront without absolute proof. And proof is what the tech priests demand. They are creatures of logic and empiricism, trained to trust data over intuition. The idea that a Xenos species would target a Forge world with its minimal biomass and vast defenses seems illogical to the point of absurdity. Surely any intelligent predator would seek easier prey, worlds teeming with conventional life rather than ones dominated by metal and machinery. This is the trap that claims so many Forge worlds. The assumption that the Tyranids think as we do, that they prioritize targets based on apparent nutritional value, that they can be predicted through mathematical modeling. The tech priests run their calculations and conclude that the probability of a Tyranid attack on their world is within acceptable parameters, low enough that no special preparations are necessary beyond the already formidable standard defenses. They fail to understand that the hive mind does not think in terms of ease or difficulty. It thinks in terms of total resource extraction. And a forge world represents resources that go far beyond simple organic matter. The metals, the minerals, the water and atmosphere, the very planetary mass itself, all of it is consumable. All of it can be broken down, processed, and incorporated into new bioforms. The Tyranids have evolved biological processes that can dissolve the hardest metals, bacteria that can break down complex industrial compounds, organisms that can separate useful elements from slag and waste. More than this, the Tyranids absorb information along with matter. The genetic database of a hive fleet that has consumed a forge world gains access to the Mechanicus's most closely guarded secrets, not through espionage or theft, but through the simple expedient of consuming the tech priests themselves and extracting their knowledge at the cellular level. The advanced augmentations, the weapon designs, the manufacturing techniques, all of this becomes part of the Tyranid genetic lexicon, available to be incorporated into future organisms. A Tyranid warrior, spawned after the consumption of a forge world, might incorporate metals into its carapace in ways that make it proof against weapons that would have slain its predecessor. A new strain of bioship might develop based on principles of structural engineering extracted from the consumption of Titan chassis. The hive mind learns, adapts, and improves with every world it consumes, and a forge world represents a treasure trove of information that makes the cost of its conquest worthwhile, even if the raw biomass is less than ideal. By the time the infiltration phase enters its final stage, the forge world is riddled with hidden threats. Lictors lurk in the depths, feeding position data and security information to their distant masters. Genestealer cults await the signal to rise up in open rebellion, their numbers potentially in the tens of thousands on a large forge world. The shadow in the warp has begun to intensify, causing increasing disruption to both astropathic communication and the function of technology that relies on machine spirits. And somewhere in the void beyond the system, detected perhaps as anomalous gravitic readings or unexplained spatial distortions, the hive fleet itself begins its final approach. The vanguard organisms have done their work. The ground has been prepared. The feast is about to begin. The shadow falls. Arrival of the hive fleet. The first confirmed sighting of the hive fleet's approach typically comes from the system's outermost monitoring stations, automated platforms, or small human outposts that exist in the frozen darkness beyond a system's inhabited worlds. These stations detect something wrong with local space, gravitational anomalies that suggest massive objects are present, but cannot be properly resolved by standard augury equipment. For the Mechanicus, this is concerning but not immediately catastrophic. Space is vast, and anomalous readings are common, often caused by nothing more than asteroid clusters or warp matter intrusions. Survey teams are dispatched to investigate, usually consisting of a small void ship with appropriate sensor suites and crew. They do not return. The loss of a survey vessel initiates more intensive investigation. Heavier ships are sent, warships with powerful auger arrays, and the weaponry to defend themselves against pirates or minor Xenos raiders. What these vessels find, assuming they survive long enough to transmit, defies easy categorization. The void is full of life. A Tyranid hive fleet in space is a sight that breaks the minds of those who behold it with full understanding. These are not ships in any conventional sense, though they move through the void and carry out functions similar to the vessels of other species. They are living things, organisms the size of cities, or even small moons, bred specifically to survive in the harsh environment of space. The smallest bioships, the vanguard drones that often comprise the outer edge of a hive fleet, are still massive by human standards, perhaps a kilometer or more in length. Their hulls are covered in chitinous armor plates that can shrug off weapons fire that would cripple steel vessels. They move not through conventional engines, but through biological analogs, sometimes by expelling gas or biomatter, sometimes through means that human science cannot fully explain, manipulating gravity, or space itself through organic processes that border on the impossible. As augurs scan deeper into the approaching swarm, the true scale becomes apparent. Larger ships, the Kraken class and hive ships that make up the fleet's core, dwarf even the mightiest Imperial battleships. These bioconstructs stretch for kilometers, vast and terrible things that bristle with weapons that are themselves living organisms. Bioplasma batteries that launch globules of superheated organic matter. Pyroacid batteries that spray streams of corrosive compounds across the void. Tentacles, kilometers long, tipped with massive talons, capable of rending through ship hulls as easily as a knife through flesh. But it is the sheer number of ships that truly drives home the scale of what is approaching. A major hive fleet tendril might include hundreds of these vessels, perhaps thousands if multiple biofleets have converged on a single target. They move in swarms, filling the void with living matter, their psychic presence so intense that it disrupts the warp itself. This disruption, the shadow in the warp, is perhaps the hive fleet's most terrifying weapon. As the bioships close with a system, the psychic pressure they generate begins to interfere with all forms of warp-based technology and communication. Astropaths, the psychically gifted individuals who allow the Imperium to communicate across light years, find their abilities first hindered and then completely blocked. Attempting to send messages through the warp becomes agonizing and eventually impossible as the shadow intensifies. For a Forge world, this means isolation. Distress calls cannot be sent. Requests for reinforcement go unanswered because they cannot even be transmitted. The world stands alone against what approaches, cut off from the wider Imperium as completely as if it existed in a separate dimension. The Forge world's defense fleet moves to intercept, because even though the situation is dire, the Mechanicus does not surrender without a fight. These are warships built in the sacred shipyards of Mars or its sister Forge worlds, vessels that represent the pinnacle of Imperial naval engineering. Cruisers and battleships bristling with lance batteries and macro cannons, weapons capable of annihilating asteroids with single volleys. Escorts darting between their larger cousins, their lighter armament still more than sufficient to cripple smaller vessels. The fleet opens fire at maximum range, lances of directed energy reaching across the void to strike the leading bioships. Direct hits are scored, burning through chitin armor and flash-cooking the alien flesh beneath. Bioships die, their massive forms going cold and lifeless as vital systems are destroyed, their corpses left to drift in the void as the fleet continues its advance. But for every bioship that falls, 10 more advance to take its place. The Tyranids do not flinch from casualties. They do not slow their advance or attempt evasive maneuvers that might save individual vessels. They simply continue forward, accepting losses that would break any conventional fleet, because those losses are acceptable to the hive mind's cold calculations. The Mechanicus fleet discovers what so many others have learned in the centuries since the Tyranids first entered the galaxy. In a straight engagement of firepower versus mass, the Tyranids will eventually win simply through attrition. They have too many ships, can absorb too many losses, and most terrifyingly, they are capable of adapting their tactics in real time as the hive mind learns from each engagement. Bioships struck by lance fire begin to excrete reflective compounds across their hulls, surfaces that ablate under energy weapons but reduce their effectiveness. The larger hive ships begin deploying smaller organisms, gargoyle swarms, and other flying creatures that can survive briefly in the void, creating clouds of interference that disrupt targeting systems and missile trajectories. Some bioships actually accelerate toward damaged Imperial vessels, willing to sacrifice themselves to bring their boarding organisms close enough to launch. The void battle becomes a desperate fighting retreat, as the Mechanicus fleet falls back toward the Forge world itself, toward the heavy orbital defense platforms that ring the planet like a crown of firepower. These stations, some the size of cities themselves, represent the ultimate in defensive architecture. Shielded by void shields and armored with adamantium, they mount enough weapons to qualify as mobile fortresses in their own right. As the biofleet enters range, these stations open fire. Macro cannons launch shells the size of buildings. Lance batteries draw power from the planet's own reactors to fire beams that can cut through battleship armor. Torpedo salvos streak through the void, each warhead carrying enough explosive force to level cities. The battle that follows lights up the void around the Forge world, a display of violence so intense that it can be seen from the surface as strange auroras playing across the sky. The light of dying bioships and exploding ordnance filtering through the polluted atmosphere. The defenders take a terrible toll on the attackers. Bioships die by the dozens, then by the hundreds, their corpses forming a ring of dead matter that orbits the planet like a ghastly halo. But the hive fleet keeps coming. The hive mind is willing to expend resources in quantities that would bankrupt any conventional military, because those resources are recoverable. The dead bioships will be consumed and recycled. The biomass they represent is not lost, but merely temporarily unavailable. And with each passing hour, more of the fleet arrives, reinforcements that seem endless streaming in from the outer system. Inevitably, impossibly, the defensive ring begins to fail. Orbital platforms go dark, their power supplies exhausted, or their reactors breached by concentrated fire. Without void shields, they become vulnerable to boarding, and the Tyranids are masters of assault actions. Mycetic spores, living drop pods, slam into the platform's hulls. Genestealers and warriors emerge, killing their way through human crews, overwhelming defensive positions through sheer ferocity. One by one, the stations fall silent. Some self-destruct, their crews denying the enemy any use of the facilities. Others are simply overwhelmed, their last messages screaming static-filled reports of contacts in the corridors, of things with too many limbs and too many teeth, of psychers driven mad by the pressure of the hive mind beating against their consciousness. The remnants of the Mechanicus fleet make one final stand, forming a defensive sphere around the Forge world itself, determined to make the enemy pay for every meter of space. They succeed, in the sense that the void around the planet becomes so dense with debris and death that it forms a navigational hazard. But success in battle is meaningless if it does not achieve strategic objectives, and the strategic objective of preventing the Tyranids from reaching the planet cannot be achieved. The biofleet breaks through the last defensive line, and the hive ships move into low orbit, positioning themselves over specific locations on the planet's surface. Their purpose at this stage is not feeding, but deployment. They have brought an army in their bellies, countless millions of bioforms spawned specifically for planetary assault, and now they will unleash them. The spore fall begins. The sky above the Forge world darkens as mycetic spores, each one a living drop pod, carrying anywhere from a few organisms to hundreds, begin their descent. They fall like rain, like snow, like a biblical plague. Millions upon millions of them, streaking through the atmosphere, trailing fire and alien ichor. Point defense systems engage, blasting spores from the sky by the thousands, but there are always more. The sheer scale of the deployment overwhelms any possible defense. The first spores impact the surface far from the main forge complexes, smashing into the industrial wastelands and slag heaps that surround every major manufacturing center. They crack open like obscene seed pods, and from within emerge the first wave of the ground invasion. Termagants, the basic infantry of the hive fleets, scuttle forth in their hundreds. Hormagaunts, bred for close assault, sprint toward any signs of life with disturbing speed. Larger forms begin to haul themselves from the bigger spores. Warriors, the junior synapse creatures that coordinate the lesser organisms. Carnifexes, living tanks that can smash through fortifications with their massive bodies. But the primary purpose of this first wave is not conquest. It is preparation. Among the bioforms are specialists, creatures designed not for combat, but for terraforming, for transforming the planet into something more suitable for Tyranid life and the eventual harvesting of all matter. The sky becomes thick with spores, microscopic organisms that begin to alter the atmospheric composition. Burrowing bioforms disappear into the ground, beginning the work of planting structures that will later sprout into something far more terrible. The very air begins to change. The existing pollutants of the Forge World's industrial atmosphere, joined by alien compounds that smell of rot and decay and things that should not exist. On the surface, in the forge complexes and hab blocks, in the sacred fanes of the machine and the barracks of the Skitarii, alarm klaxons sound. The noosphere, the data network that connects all Mechanicus assets, lights up with threat indicators, contact reports, requests for orders. The defense of the Forge World, the real war, the grinding battle that will determine whether this world stands or falls, is about to begin. And deep in the abandoned tunnels, in the forgotten places beneath the surface, the lictors that have lurked there for months begin to move with sudden purpose. The Genestealer cults receive their long-awaited signal, the clarion call to action they have dreamed of for generations. Throughout the Forge World, in hundreds of locations simultaneously, sabotage occurs on a massive scale. Power plants go offline, ammunition depots explode, transit systems shut down. The infrastructure of the Forge World, already strained by the attack from orbit, begins to fail in critical locations. The hive mind has planned this attack with a thoroughness that would impress the most meticulous military strategist. Every element works in concert. The orbital assault coordinated with the uprising from within, the disruption of communications and technology, timed to maximize confusion and prevent effective response. The battle for the Forge World has begun, and already the defenders are on their back foot, reacting to threats rather than implementing their defensive plans, struggling to restore order even as the enemy lands in ever greater numbers. The tech priests realize, perhaps for the first time, that their calculations were flawed. The Tyranids are not following predictable patterns. They are not prioritizing targets the way a rational force would. They have come for this Forge World, not despite its vast defenses, but because of what it represents. The technology, the knowledge, the infrastructure itself, all of it is valuable to the hive mind. And the hive mind has decided that the value justifies the cost. No matter how many bioforms must be sacrificed, no matter how long the battle takes, this world will fall. The only question is how many of its defenders will survive to see the end. The answer, as it almost always is with Tyranid invasions, will be none. The initial assault, steel against kitten. The first hours of the ground invasion are chaos incarnate, a maelstrom of violence that erupts across every continent of the Forge World simultaneously. The coordination required for such an operation would be impossible for any conventional military, requiring communication across thousands of kilometers, precise timing, and the ability to adapt to rapidly changing tactical situations. But the hive mind is not bound by the limitations of communication technology or command structure. It is everywhere at once, perceiving through a million eyes, thinking with a million brains, coordinating its forces with a precision that organic generals can only envy. The Skitarii respond with the mechanical efficiency for which they are renowned. These cybernetic warriors do not panic or flee. Fear has been surgically removed from their psychology, replaced with doctrinal imperatives and logical threat assessment. When the landing sites are confirmed, entire cohorts of Skitarii redeploy with practiced precision, marching from their barracks in perfectly synchronized columns, their augmented legs carrying them at speeds that would exhaust unmodified humans within minutes. Skitarii Rangers, specialists in long-range warfare, take up positions in the ruins of the outer industrial zones, their galvanic rifles calibrated for maximum effectiveness against chitinous targets. These weapons are marvels of Mechanicus engineering, capable of firing specialized rounds that deliver both kinetic and electrical damage. The electromagnetic pulse they generate with each shot disrupts the nervous systems of organic targets, potentially paralyzing or killing creatures whose biology evolved without such considerations. The Rangers open fire at extreme range, their augmented eyes and integrated targeting systems allowing them to place shots with inhuman accuracy. Termagants fall by the hundreds, their small forms no match for concentrated fire from entrenched positions. Hormagaunts that charge across open ground are cut down before they can close to striking distance, their bodies piling up to form barriers of their own dead that subsequent waves must climb over. For a few brief hours, it appears that the defense might hold. The Skitarii are taking minimal casualties, their superior range and fortified positions allowing them to extract a terrible price for every meter the Tyranids advance. The Tyranid advance slows, then stops, then in some sectors actually retreats as the smaller bioforms are slaughtered faster than they can be replaced from the landing sites. But the tech priests monitoring the battle from their command centers notice something disturbing. The enemy casualties, while massive, are not random. The Tyranids are learning. Subsequent waves advance using different approaches, avoiding killing grounds, using terrain more effectively. More concerning, the types of bioforms being deployed are changing in response to the defenders' tactics. Venomthropes begin to appear, floating monsters that emit toxic clouds capable of corroding even Skitarii augmentations. Tyrannophexes, living artillery pieces, position themselves at extreme range and begin bombarding Skitarii positions. With bioplasma, globules of superheated organic matter that explode on impact with the force of artillery shells. Zoanthropes drift over the battlefield, protected by psychic barriers that deflect physical projectiles while their own powers tear armored vehicles apart from the inside out. The Mechanicus responds by deploying heavier assets. Cataphron battle servitors, grotesque combinations of human torso and tracked chassis, lumber into position, carrying plasma culverins and heavy grav cannons. Onager dune crawlers, walker tanks that move on multi-jointed legs, advance to support the infantry with their neutron lasers and Icarus arrays. Sidonian dragoons, Skitarii, mounted on mechanical steeds and carrying crackling taser lances, race across the battlefield to countercharge any bioforms that break through the firing lines. The scale of the battle rapidly escalates. What began as skirmishes in the outer wastelands expands into full-scale warfare as more and more spores land and disgorge their cargo. The Tyranids are bringing in heavier bioforms, creatures spawned specifically to crack fortifications and overcome prepared defenses. Carnifexes, massive quadrupedal monsters that can weigh several tons, charge Skitarii positions with the inevitability of avalanches. Their chitin armor is thick enough to shrug off small arms fire, and they carry biocannons integrated into their own bodies, living weapons that fire bursts of flesh-eating bioorganisms or streams of crystallized toxins. A single Carnifex can tear through a Skitarii defensive line if not stopped, its massive crushing claws and bone-crushing jaws making it lethal in close combat. The Mechanicus deploys Castellan robots to counter these heavy bioforms. These machine warriors are ancient constructs, dating back to the dark age of technology, programmed for battle but limited in autonomy by doctrinal restrictions against true artificial intelligence. Standing several times the height of a man, a Castellan robot is essentially a walking tank, its chassis protected by dense armor and mounting weapons that would require vehicle mounts for conventional infantry. When Carnifexes clash with Castellan robots, the battles are titanic. Metal meets chitin in struggles that level everything around them. Mechanical fists pounding against organic armor, bioweapons melting through metal plating, neither side willing to give ground. The Tyranids fight with mindless ferocity, driven forward by the hive mind's imperatives. The robots fight with mechanical precision, executing programmed battle doctrines with absolute consistency. And all across the battlefield, In hundreds of locations, similar engagements unfold. The war for the Forge world is not a single battle, but 1,000 battles, fought simultaneously across an entire planet. In the Factorum districts, Skitarii Vanguard conduct brutal room-to-room clearing operations against genostealers that have infiltrated the industrial complexes. In the slag wastes, armored columns of Scorpius vehicles duel with swarms of Tyranid warriors and their accompanying broods. In the mining territories, subterranean warfare rages as burrowing bioforms tunnel beneath defensive positions, emerging behind the lines to wreak havoc. The tech priests coordinate the defense from their command centers, vast chambers where hololithic displays show the entire planetary situation in real time. Data streams in from thousands of sources, augur readings from surviving orbital platforms, reports from Skitarii cohort commanders, sensor data from automated defense systems. The tech priests process this information with cybernetic efficiency, calculating threat assessments, allocating resources, adjusting defensive strategies. But even their enhanced cognition is struggling to keep pace with the scale of the invasion. The Tyranids are attacking everywhere, with strength enough at each point to require significant defensive forces. Traditional military doctrine would suggest identifying the main thrust and concentrating forces there, but with Tyranids, such doctrines fail. There is no main thrust. Every attack is the main attack. Every landing site is equally important to the hive mind strategy. The decision is made to deploy the Titans. It is not made lightly. Titans are irreplaceable, their loss a tragedy that resonates through the Mechanicus for generations. But if a Titan cannot be deployed in the defense of its home Forge world, then when can it ever be deployed? The god machines stride from their sacred engine fanes, the ground shaking with each thunderous step. The smallest, the Warhound Scout Titans, move with predatory grace despite their massive size, their weaponry scanning for targets even before they clear the fane doors. Behind them come the Reavers, more heavily armored and mounting weapons that could level city blocks. And at the center of the formation stride the Warlords, towering avatars of the machine god's wrath, their every movement a prayer made manifest in metal and firepower. The arrival of the Titans on the battlefield shifts the tactical situation immediately. A Warlord Titan, mounting a plasma annihilator, can vaporize entire swarms of smaller bioforms with single shots, the superheated matter expanding in blooms of destruction that consume everything in their radius. A Reaver's Gatling blaster can shred heavy bioforms with sustained fire, the weight of thousands of shells overwhelming even the toughest kite in armor. But the Tyranids have encountered Titans before, and the hive mind has spawned counters. Bio-Titans, creatures that dwarf even the largest carnifexes, begin to emerge from the largest mycetic spores. Hierophants, towering monsters that stand as tall as Reaver Titans, advance on legs like living pillars. Hierodules, smaller but no less deadly, position themselves to fire their biocannons at the god machines. The battles between Titans and Bio-Titans are apocalyptic. When a Warlord's plasma annihilator locks onto a Hierophant, the resulting detonation can be seen from orbit, a miniature sun born on the planet's surface. When a Bio-Titan's acid spray strikes a Reaver, the god machine's adamantium armor begins to dissolve, its machine spirit screaming in digital agony as vital systems fail. These are not battles in any conventional sense. They are trials of extinction, each side throwing its most powerful units into combat with the full knowledge that losses cannot easily be replaced. A Titan lost is decades or centuries of construction and ritual made worthless in minutes. A Bio-Titan lost is months of biomass investment and genetic engineering dissolved in nuclear fire. And yet, impossibly, the Tyranids have more Bio-Titans than the Mechanicus has Titans. The Hive fleet has been feeding for years, consuming dozens of worlds to reach this point. It has resources measured in planetary masses, biomaterial enough to spawn armies that would dwarf the entire Astra Militarum. The Forge World, for all its industrial might, cannot match this sheer material advantage. As the hours turn to days, the defensive lines begin to compress, not breaking, not rooting, but falling back in good order, conducting fighting retreats that extract maximum cost from the attackers, while preserving as much of the defensive force as possible. The outer industrial zones are abandoned, their facilities destroyed to deny them to the enemy. The slag wastes are ceded, their worthless territory not worth defending. The defensive perimeter contracts toward the core forge complexes, toward the heart of the Mechanicus' presence on this world. And everywhere the defenders retreat from, the Tyranids advance, not with triumphant charges or celebration, but with methodical consumption. Even as the battle continues, even as the fighting rages in the middle zones, the Tyranids are already beginning the next phase of their invasion in the territory they have secured. The real horror is about to begin. The consumption, the rising of the towers. In the wake of the advancing Tyranid forces, in the territories they have secured through blood and biomass expenditure, a transformation begins. It starts subtly, easily missed amid the chaos of the ongoing battle. Spores that seemed like nothing more than the detritus of combat begin to germinate, taking root in the poisoned soil of the Forge World, feeding on the industrial pollutants that would kill any conventional plant life. Within hours, these spores have developed into something more substantial. Alien vegetation begins to carpet the ground, fleshy tendrils and bulbous growths that pulse with obscene life. This is not flora as any biologist would recognize it. These are purpose-grown bioforms, part of the Tyranid ecosystem but immobile, more akin to organs than to independent creatures. The atmosphere begins to change in these zones. The already toxic air of the Forge World grows heavier, thick with new compounds. Spore clouds drift on the wind, carrying microscopic organisms that begin the work of breaking down anything organic at the molecular level. Any vegetation that remains from before the invasion, the hardy lichens and toxin-resistant fungi that cling to life in Forge World environments, begins to dissolve. Animals that might have survived in the waste zones, mutant rats or industrial insects, find their very bodies beginning to break down from the inside out as alien bacteria colonize their cells. But it is what begins to grow from the largest spore pods that truly signals the new phase of the invasion. Tech priests, monitoring from orbit, from the few observation platforms still functional, watch in mounting horror as structures begin to rise from the conquered territories. At first, they appear like nothing more than strange rock formations, pillars of what looks like bone or chitin that thrust upward from the ground. But these growths do not stop at a few meters. They continue to rise and rise and rise. These are capillary towers, and they are the true nightmare of any world facing Tyranid invasion. Each tower is a living thing, a bioform grown specifically for one terrible purpose: the extraction and transport of biomass from the planet's surface to the orbiting bioships above. The towers grow at horrifying speeds, adding meters to their height by the hour. They are not uniform structures, but organic things that adapt their form to the environment around them. Some grow straight and narrow, needle-like spires reaching toward the sky. Others develop broad bases that spread across the ground like the roots of massive trees. All of them are connected beneath the surface by networks of tendril roots that spread through the ground like blood vessels, creating vast underground networks that link the towers together and to the reclamation pools that form at their bases. These pools are perhaps even more disturbing than the towers themselves. They begin as simple depressions in the ground, where the alien vegetation grows especially thick. But as the towers continue to rise and the roots spread further, these depressions deepen and fill with liquid, a digestive soup of such potent acidity that it can dissolve metals, ceramics, and organic matter with equal efficiency. The purpose of this system becomes apparent when the first Ripper swarms are deployed in force. Rippers are perhaps the most numerous of all Tyranid bioforms, small creatures roughly the size of a human head, consisting of little more than a mouth filled with multiple rows of serrated teeth and enough digestive capacity to consume several times their own body mass. They are mindless, driven by nothing but hunger, and they are deployed in swarms that number in the millions. When Ripper swarms descend upon an area, they devour everything. Every scrap of organic matter, every piece of debris from the battle, every fallen body, whether Tyranid or defender, all of it is consumed. The Rippers eat until their bodies are grotesquely distended, then instinctively make their way to the nearest reclamation pool. There, in a final act of biological efficiency, they throw themselves into the digestive acids, adding their own biomass to the soup, along with everything they have eaten. The reclamation pools bubble and churn with constant activity as thousands upon thousands of Rippers throw themselves to dissolution. The liquid grows deeper, richer, a concentrate of biological material reduced to its most basic components. And through the root systems that connect to the capillary towers, this digestive soup begins to flow upward. The towers act as enormous organic pumps, drawing the liquefied biomass from the reclamation pools through internal systems of what can only be described as organic plumbing. As they draw more material, they continue to grow taller, some reaching heights of kilometers into the atmosphere. The largest towers in the most resource-rich zones can stretch tens of kilometers high, becoming visible from distant parts of the planet. Terrible spires that mark the advance of the consumption like mile markers on the road to apocalypse. But the towers do more than simply transport biomass. They also filter the atmosphere, drawing in air through countless pores in their surface and extracting any organic particles it contains. Microbes, floating fungal spores, dust that contains any trace of biological material, all of it is captured and added to the flow of nutrients moving up the tower. The towers effectively breathe, and every breath strips more life from the planet. Even more disturbing is the tower's ability to extend tendrils, fibrous appendages that can stretch for hundreds of meters from the tower's main trunk. These tendrils are not passive. They are predatory, and they will capture and dissolve any creature that ventures too close. They move with disturbing purpose, questing through the air like the tentacles of some vast subterranean octopus, and anything they touch begins to dissolve. The tendrils secreting powerful digestive enzymes that reduce flesh and even metal to a slurry that can be absorbed. The defenders mount attacks against the towers, recognizing them as critical infrastructure. Skitarii units conduct raids into Tyranid-held territory, penetrating as close as they can to the towers before unleashing concentrated firepower. Melter weapons, designed to generate heat sufficient to melt through vehicle armor, are turned against the tower's chitin-like exterior. Plasma guns sear through layers of organic matter, boring deep into the tower's internal structure. And the towers die. They can be killed. A tower that takes sufficient damage will collapse, its internal systems failing, its connection to the root network severed. The biomass it contains spills across the ground, wasted at least temporarily. The Mechanicus celebrates these victories, calculating that each destroyed tower represents a significant setback to the Tyranid harvest. But for every tower destroyed, 2 more are growing. The hive mind anticipated these attacks and built redundancy into its strategy. The loss of individual towers is acceptable, even expected. What matters is that enough towers survive and grow tall enough to complete their ultimate function. That function becomes clear when the first towers reach sufficient height to extend beyond the planet's upper atmosphere. At these altitudes, where the air grows thin and the stars are visible even during the day cycle, the tips of the towers begin to split open, revealing internal structures that have been growing within them all along. These terminus structures are complex assemblies of organic material, combining elements of a flower's bloom with the functionality of industrial pumps. And from orbit, the hive ships respond. These massive bioconstructs, some the size of cities, maneuver into position above the towers. From their undersides, they extrude feeding tubes, massive organic appendages kilometers in length that descend toward the planet's surface. These tubes are protected by layers of armor that allow them to survive entry into the upper atmosphere, and they are guided by sensors that can detect the psychic beacon of the towers below. The connection, when it occurs, is almost gentle. The feeding tube from the hive ship locks onto the terminus structure of the tower with a precision that speaks to biological engineering of the highest order. Seals form, creating an airtight connection. And then the flow begins. The biomass collected in the reclamation pools, transported up through the tower's internal systems, now flows further upward through the feeding tubes and into the hive ships themselves. The bioships are literally drinking the planet, consuming its liquefied biomass in quantities measured in thousands of tons per hour. Multiple towers connect to multiple ships, creating a network of organic pipelines that bridge the gap between surface and orbit. From a distance, the sight is perversely beautiful in its horror. The towers stand like pillars holding up the sky, and the feeding tubes descend like the strings of some cosmic instrument, connecting the planet below to the hungry entities above. It is a direct manifestation of the Tyranid purpose, an ecosystem in full operation, the machinery of consumption working exactly as evolved to function. But the towers are not merely transporting organic matter. The hive mind has learned, through the consumption of countless worlds, that life is not the only valuable resource a planet can offer. The towers are also pulling up water from underground aquifers, draining them systematically. Where a tower is planted near an ocean, specialized roots extend into the depths, and the seas begin to recede as their liquid is drawn upward and off-world. Even the atmosphere itself is being harvested. The towers filter air constantly, but as more and more towers reach full operation, the cumulative effect becomes noticeable. The atmospheric pressure begins to drop as gases are transported off-world. The sky takes on a strange quality, the light refracting differently as the density of the air changes. Those defenders still fighting on the surface notice it becoming harder to breathe, and those without sealed life support begin to suffer from the effects of decreasing oxygen levels. The Mechanicus realizes with mounting despair that they are not merely fighting to repel an invasion. They are fighting to prevent the complete dissolution of their world. The Tyranids are not here to conquer. They are here to consume, and that consumption includes everything. The very planet itself is being reduced to raw material, processed and transported into orbit to feed the hive fleet's endless hunger. The scale of this operation is difficult to comprehend. Billions upon billions of tons of matter are being moved from surface to orbit, a feat that would require infrastructure on a galactic scale for any conventional civilization. But the Tyranids have evolved to do this naturally, their entire species optimized for resource extraction on planetary scales. And as the towers continue to grow, as more feeding tubes connect, as the flow of biomass accelerates, the true horror of the Tyranid threat becomes undeniable. This is not an enemy that can be negotiated with or deterred. This is not a force that will accept surrender or mercy. The hive mind has decided this world's fate, and that fate is total conversion of all matter into forms useful to the swarm. The defenders continue to fight because they know no other option. They mount increasingly desperate attacks on the tower networks, throwing resources into offensives that have no hope of strategic success, but might delay the inevitable by hours or days. Tech priests recalculate their projections and see nothing but statistical certainty of defeat. Skitarii cohorts, their numbers depleted by constant combat, continue to execute their doctrinal imperatives because the alternative is to accept the unacceptable. And in the shadows between the towers, in the waste zones being transformed by alien biology, in the territories where the Mechanicus presence has been completely eradicated, an alien ecosystem flourishes. This is what a world looks like when the Tyranids are winning. This is the future that awaits any planet that cannot stop the Great Devourer. The Forge World, for all its mighty defenses and ancient weapons, for all the valor of its Skitarii and the wisdom of its tech priests, for all the power of its titans and the sanctity of its forges, is being eaten alive. And there is nothing its defenders can do to stop it. The final defense, the sacrifice of the machine, God's servants. As the capillary towers continue their inexorable work and the defensive perimeter continues to contract, the battle for the Forge world enters its final, desperate phase. The tech priests, for all their computational prowess and logical analysis, cannot deny the mathematical reality that confronts them. The projections are clear, calculated with mechanical precision. Without immediate and substantial reinforcement, the world will fall within weeks at the current rate of consumption. Reinforcement, of course, is impossible. The shadow in the warp prevents any communication with the wider Imperium. Even if messages could be sent, even if aid could be dispatched, it would arrive too late. The Forge world stands alone, as it has from the moment the first hive ship entered the system. The defenders must work with what resources they have, and those resources dwindle with every passing day. The decision is made to abandon the outer forge complexes entirely and consolidate all remaining forces in the primary manufactorum zones, the oldest and most heavily fortified areas of the planet. This is not retreat in the conventional sense. It is the formation of a final defensive position, a fortress within a fortress where the defenders will make their last stand. The withdrawal is conducted with mechanicus precision, each unit falling back according to carefully calculated schedules. Demolition charges planted to deny infrastructure to the enemy, resources that cannot be transported destroyed rather than allowed to fall into Tyranid hands. Or rather, what passes for hands among creatures that might have claws, talons, or tentacles instead. The Skitarii conduct the rearguard actions, holding positions just long enough to allow civilians and critical personnel to evacuate before falling back themselves. These actions are brutally costly. Entire cohorts sacrifice themselves to buy minutes or hours, their augmented warriors fighting until their ammunition is exhausted and then engaging in close combat, their powered weapons and integrated combat modifications allowing them to continue killing even as they are overwhelmed. The Tyranids press hard against these rearguards, seeming to sense that the defenders are at a critical point. Warrior forms coordinate massive assaults, throwing swarm after swarm against defensive positions in waves that seem endless. The smaller bioforms, termagants and hormagaunts, are used as cannon fodder, their role simply to overwhelm defenders through sheer mass. Behind them come the heavies, the carnifexes, and tyrant guard, protected by the bodies of lesser forms until they can close to effective range. The battles in the transitional zones, the areas between the outer complexes being abandoned and the inner redoubt being fortified, are among the most intense of the entire invasion. Here, in industrial canyons formed by decades of construction and between massive machinery that still operates on automated protocols, the defenders make the Tyranids pay for every meter in blood and biomass. A single intersection might see combat that lasts for days. Skitarii rangers firing from windows and rooftops, while vanguard units conduct close quarters, clearing operations in the structures below. Servitors are deployed as stationary weapon platforms, their bodies welded into firing positions where they will remain until destroyed or the enemy is repelled. Cataphron battle servitors wade into close combat, their tracked bases allowing them to advance even over piles of enemy dead, their heavy weapons firing point blank into the swarm. And everywhere the Titans stride through the battle, their presence providing a psychological boost as much as a tactical advantage. To fight in the shadow of a warlord Titan, to know that such power fights alongside you, gives even augmented warriors a sense of confidence that defies mere logic. The Titans become symbols as much as weapons, manifestations of the Omnissiah's will, proof that the machine god has not abandoned his servants even in their darkest hour. But Titans can be killed. and the Tyranids have evolved specifically to bring down such massive targets. Hive tyrants, the largest and most intelligent of the synapse creatures, coordinate attacks on the god machines. They deploy swarms of flying bioforms to interfere with the Titans' targeting systems, clouds of gargoyles that block line of sight and force the crew to rely on auger readings rather than direct observation. Bio-Titan units move into position, their own weapons capable of inflicting damage on Titan-grade armor. And most dangerous of all, specialized bioforms have been spawned that carry biological weapons designed specifically to penetrate void shields and compromise adamantium plating. The loss of the first Titan is a moment of collective anguish for the defenders. The Reaver Battle Titan, designated Crimson Truth, falls in the Manufactorum Delta 7 district, brought down by concentrated fire from 3 hydrodual bioconstructs, while it was engaged with a swarm of lesser forms that prevented it from maneuvering effectively. The Princeps, feeling their god machine die around them, sends a final burst of binary cant over the noosphere before the reactor goes critical. The Titan's death explosion taking hundreds of Tyranid organisms with it. The loss is mourned, but there is no time for proper funeral rites, no opportunity to recover the Titan's priceless systems, or perform the sacred rituals that would normally accompany the death of such a revered machine. The battle continues because it must, because stopping means death, because the very act of resistance has become an article of faith, independent of any hope of victory. Within the inner redoubt, preparations intensify. Every tech priest who can be spared from critical duties is put to work constructing additional defenses. Servitor labor teams, immune to fatigue or despair, work around the clock to raise walls, dig tank traps, position weapons in overlapping fields of fire. The sacred forges, even under siege, continue to produce ammunition and replacement parts, their output prioritized toward immediate tactical needs, rather than long-term strategic production. The civilian population, those menials not directly involved in defense or critical industrial processes, are gathered into the deepest levels of the forge complexes, areas where meters of reinforced structures stand between them and the surface. They are given what protection can be offered, which is precious little against an enemy willing to dig, burrow, and tunnel to reach its prey. The Genestealer cults, their role as saboteurs completed, now emerge into open rebellion. Having spent years or decades hiding their true nature, they throw off any pretense and attack their former colleagues from within. These uprisings are particularly devastating because the cultists know the layouts of the forge complexes intimately, know where the critical systems are located, know which points of failure will cause the most disruption. Security forces, already stretched impossibly thin, must now divert resources to dealing with internal threats. Battles rage in the corridors of forged temples, heretics wielding industrial tools as weapons against Scutarii squads. In some sections, the cultists manage to seize control of entire facilities before they can be dislodged, forcing the defenders to retake their own territory, room by room. The psychological impact of this betrayal cannot be overstated. The Mechanicus values loyalty and dedication above almost all other qualities. The revelation that individuals who had served faithfully for decades were actually Xeno's corrupted infiltrators strikes at the very foundation of trust within the organization. Tech priests begin to question whether others around them might also be compromised, whether the menial servicing their systems might actually be a hybrid waiting for the moment to strike. This paranoia, while understandable, further degrades the defenders' effectiveness. Resources are spent on internal security checks that could have been used elsewhere. Individuals are detained on suspicion, removed from critical positions based on nothing more than questionable behavior or unusual genetic markers. In trying to root out infiltrators, the defenders risk becoming their own worst enemy. And outside, the Tyranids continue their advance. The territory they have conquered is now unrecognizable as the industrial wasteland it once was. Alien vegetation carpets everything, the ground itself having transformed into a living carpet of Tyranid biomass. The capillary towers have grown to their full height, some now extending beyond the planet's atmosphere, their tips connecting with the feeding tubes of orbiting bioships. The harvest is in full swing, thousands of tons of liquefied biomass flowing upward every hour. The environmental changes accelerate. The atmospheric pressure continues to drop as gases are harvested. The temperature rises in some areas and plummets in others as the normal climate patterns are disrupted. Weather becomes chaotic, strange storms of acidic rain sweeping across the landscape, winds carrying spores thick enough to be visible as clouds. For those still fighting on the surface, the conditions become increasingly hazardous, even with sealed armor and life support. The air is poison, the water undrinkable, the ground itself sometimes unstable as subterranean root networks hollow out the substrate. The forge world that once was, for all its industrial pollution and toxic environment, was at least a place where modified humans could survive. What it is becoming is alien in every sense, a world transformed into something that serves the Tyranid purpose alone. The tech priests monitor these changes with detached horror, watching as their models predict the timeline to complete planetary consumption. The projections are refined daily, then hourly, as new data becomes available. Each refinement brings the estimated completion date closer, the mathematical certainty of doom counting down with mechanical precision. Some tech priests, facing this inevitable fate, make a different choice. If the world cannot be saved, if the Forge world will fall regardless of resistance, then at least its secrets can be denied to the enemy. These individuals begin the process of purging data archives, destroying records that have been maintained for thousands of years, erasing the accumulated knowledge of generations. They do this, knowing it is a form of heresy, that the preservation of knowledge is one of the Mechanicus's highest duties. But they rationalize that allowing such knowledge to fall into the hands or claws or whatever appendages the Tyranids possess would be a greater sin. The hive mind must not be allowed to incorporate the sacred technologies of the machine god into its genetic database. Other tech priests refuse this path. They argue that even if the world falls, even if all defenders perish, the knowledge itself is sacred and must be preserved. They begin uploading data to ships in orbit, vessels that might escape the system and carry the information to other Forge worlds. It is a desperate hope, based on the slim possibility that something, anything, might survive the coming destruction. The Titans, those mighty god machines that have fought with such distinction throughout the battle, are now being deployed in increasingly desperate gambits. With the defensive perimeter collapsed to its minimum extent, the Titans no longer have room to maneuver as they prefer. They become stationary weapons platforms, positioned at critical choke points where their firepower can be brought to bear most effectively. The princeps who guide these war engines feel the change in their role. Titans are meant to stride across battlefields, crushing enemies beneath their feet, burning swathes through enemy lines. Being relegated to essentially defensive turrets goes against every instinct in their training, against the very nature of their neural bonding with the god machines. But they accept it because they understand the reality. This is not a battle to be won through aggressive maneuver or bold assault. This is a battle of attrition, and the only hope is to make the Tyranids pay such a horrific price for victory that they abandon the attack and seek easier prey elsewhere. It is a forlorn hope. The hive mind does not calculate cost-benefit ratios in ways that would lead to such decisions. It has committed resources to this conquest, and those resources will be spent until the objective is achieved, or the forces available are completely depleted. Given the size of the hive fleet, the latter seems impossible, as the final defensive line is tested by increasingly heavy assaults, as casualties mount beyond any sustainable rate, as ammunition stockpiles dwindle and cannot be replaced quickly enough, despite the still functioning forges. the defenders of the Forge world come to understand a simple truth. They are going to lose. Not might lose. Not could lose if circumstances don't improve. They are going to lose, with the inevitability of a mathematical proof. The numbers don't lie, and the numbers say that victory is impossible, that survival is impossible, that everyone fighting on this world will die here. And still they fight. Not because they believe they can win, but because they are the Skitarii and they know no other way. Not because they have hope, but because they have duty. Not because the machine god will save them, but because the machine god expects them to fight until the last round is fired and the last blade broken. This is what it means to face the Tyranids. This is the nature of the Great Devourer. It does not offer the glory of noble defeat. It does not recognize courage or sacrifice as meaningful concepts. It simply consumes with the same regard for its victims that a fire has for the fuel it burns. And the consumption is almost complete. The dissolution, a world unmade. The final days of the Forge world pass in a haze of violence and desperation that seems to exist outside normal time. There is no day or night anymore. The sun occluded by the clouds of spores and the smoke of burning structures, the darkness lit by weapon fire and the glow of plasma detonations. There is only the battle, continuous and unending, a meat grinder of mechanical efficiency where both sides feed in troops and material and receive corpses in return. The Skitarii cohorts, once numbered in the hundreds of thousands, have been reduced to scattered remnants. Individual squads cut off from higher command, but continuing to fight because their doctrinal imperatives require it. Many have exhausted their ammunition, resorting to melee combat, with tools and maintenance equipment repurposed as weapons. Augmented warriors face down Hormigaunt swarms with nothing but their servo-enhanced fists and the faith that the Omnissiah will grant them strength. The Titans, those mighty god machines, have been worn down through continuous combat. Void shields are depleted faster than they can regenerate. Armor plating shows the scars of bioplasma and acid damage, the blessed adamantium pitted and corroded. Weapon systems malfunction from overuse, barrels warped by heat, loaders jammed with debris. The machine spirits grow restless, their anger and pain bleeding through to the princeps, who feel their suffering like their own. One by one, the god machines fall. The Warhound Titan Hunter's moon is swarmed by gargoyle broods while engaging a group of carnifexes, its crew blinded by the sheer mass of flying bodies coating their optical systems, and it steps unknowingly into a pit excavated by burrowing organisms. The Titan topples, its weapons firing uselessly into the air as it falls, and the swarm descends upon it, ripping away armor plates to reach the vulnerable crew within. The Reaver Titan Iron Devotion makes its final stand in the ruins of Forge Temple Primus, standing over the broken body of its sister Titan, Silent Wisdom, which fell hours before. Its princeps, connected so deeply to the Titan's machine spirit that separation is no longer possible, chooses death over retreat. The Titan's reactor is overloaded deliberately, and when it detonates, the explosion levels several city blocks and incinerates thousands of Tyranid organisms, a funeral pyre befitting a god machine's final moments. The last warlord Titan, Omnissiah's wrath, the Forge world's most sacred god machine, falls while defending the entrance to the primary Forge cathedral. Surrounded by mounds of Tyranid corpses, its ammunition exhausted and its systems failing, it fights on, using its power fists as clubs, crushing carnifexes with blows that shake the ground. But even a god machine cannot fight forever, and eventually, a Hierophant bioconstruct closes to range and tears through the Titan's leg actuators with its massive scything talons. The Warlord Titan falls like a cut tree, crashing into the structures it was defending, its machine spirit crying out in electronic anguish as systems fail, cascade throughout its body. The princeps, refusing to abandon their command even in death, activates the reactor's self-destruct sequence. The resulting explosion is visible from orbit, a bloom of nuclear fire that vaporizes everything within a kilometer radius. With the fall of the last Titan, something fundamental breaks in the defenders' spirits. The god machines were more than weapons. They were symbols, manifestations of the machine god's power made physical. Their destruction feels almost like a theological crisis, a suggestion that perhaps the Omnissiah has truly abandoned this world to its fate. But there is no time for spiritual crisis, no opportunity for despair. The Tyranids press forward with renewed intensity, seeming to sense that the defenders are at their breaking point. The assault becomes a continuous pressure from all directions, probing for weaknesses, exploiting any gap in the defensive line. The tech priests in their command centers watch as the hololithic displays show defensive positions winking out, symbols of Skitarii units going dark as they are overrun or annihilated. The noosphere, the data network that has coordinated the defense throughout the battle, becomes fragmented as relay stations are destroyed and transmission nodes are consumed. Communication degrades from instant data transfer to voice messages sent via whatever channels remain functional, to finally nothing but isolated pockets fighting blind, with no idea what is happening beyond their immediate vicinity. In the depths of the Forge Cathedral, in the most sacred spaces where the highest mysteries of the cult Mechanicus are preserved, the final preparations are made. Those artifacts that can be evacuated are loaded onto the few remaining spacecraft, ships whose crews know they face only slim chances of surviving the gauntlet of bioships surrounding the planet. Those artifacts too large or sacred to move are rigged with demolition charges, set to detonate if the cathedral is breached. The Archmagos who rules the Forge world, who has led its people for centuries and overseen its growth and prosperity, stands in the central nave of the Forge Cathedral and contemplates their failure. They have run the calculations countless times, searching for any variable they might have overlooked, any strategy that might yet snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. But mathematics is immutable, and the mathematics of this situation are clear. They are going to die, and their world is going to die with them. The Archmagos transmits a final message across all remaining frequencies, a benediction and farewell to those who still fight. Servants of the Omnissiah, you have fulfilled your duty with honor that will be remembered as long as the cult Mechanicus endures. Though our world falls, though we are consumed, know that your sacrifice has not been meaningless. You have shown that even in the face of extinction, humanity does not yield. You have proven that the flesh may be weak, but the machine endures, and the spirit within the machine cannot be broken. The Omnissiah watches over you, and your data will be preserved in the sacred archives of Mars. Go now to your final rest, knowing you have served well. It is not a stirring speech, not the kind of emotional exhortation that might come from an imperial commander or ecclesiarchy preacher. It is data, cold and logical, but within that data is the truth. They fought well, and that matters, even if the outcome was never in doubt. The message is received by those Skitarii still capable of receiving it, and in their augmented minds, they process it with the same mechanical efficiency they bring to all information. They understand that they are being given permission to die, that continued resistance is no longer required by doctrine. And with that understanding, many make a choice that seems almost human, almost organic in its defiance of pure logic. They keep fighting, not because doctrine requires it, not because they believe they can win, but because the act of resistance itself has become the point, because going quietly into extinction is unacceptable, because rage, even mechanically mediated rage, is better than passive acceptance. In thousands of locations across the contracting defensive zone, Skitarii launch final assaults against Tyranid positions. Without concern for ammunition conservation or tactical positioning, they advance firing, determined to kill as many of the enemy as possible before they themselves are killed. The vanguard units, already radioactive enough that they glow faintly in the dark, push into the thickest swarms, accepting their own deaths as weapons, spreading radiation poisoning through sheer proximity. The Cataphron battle servitors, their tracked bodies damaged and their weapons malfunctioning, wade into melee combat, using their weight and bulk as weapons, crushing smaller bioforms beneath their treads and battering larger ones with mechanical arms. When their systems finally fail, when damage accumulates beyond their ability to function, they self-destruct, taking clustered enemies with them in explosions of plasma and servitor parts. The actual human tech priests, those few who remain in position rather than having evacuated to the deepest vaults, fight with whatever tools they have at hand. Plasma cutters become weapons. Industrial servitors are reprogrammed for combat, their construction tools modified to serve as crude bludgeons. Even menials, facing certain death, arm themselves with whatever they can find and resist, knowing that their deaths will come regardless, but choosing to meet them on their feet rather than cowering. And all across the Forge world, in territory long since conquered by the Tyranids, the consumption process accelerates toward its final phase. The capillary towers have reached their full function, pumping biomass into orbit at maximum capacity. But now, something new begins to happen. The towers begin to wither. Having served their purpose, having extracted all available biomass from their surrounding zones, the towers themselves are being consumed. Ripper swarms, specialized variants spawned for this specific task, begin stripping the towers from the bottom up, devouring their substance and carrying it to the remaining active towers for processing. The great organic spires that have dominated the landscape for weeks begin to collapse, their biomass reclaimed and recycled with the same efficiency that characterizes all Tyranid operations. Even the alien vegetation, the carpet of Tyranid biomatter that has transformed the surface, is being consumed. Harvester organisms methodically devour it, leaving behind nothing but bare rock, stone that has been leached of all organic contamination, ground stripped down to its mineral components. The Tyranids are not merely conquering this world, they are erasing it, removing all evidence that it was ever anything but a barren rock orbiting a star. The industrial structures are toppled and consumed, their metals dissolved and extracted. The forge temples, standing for thousands of years, are reduced to rubble, and then the rubble itself is processed. Even the pollution, the toxic compounds that have accumulated in the soil and water over millennia of industry, is being broken down and filtered out by specialized organisms, the useful elements extracted and the rest left as inert residue. The water is almost gone. The once vast underground aquifers sucked dry. The liquid transported into orbit to serve biological processes in the hive ships. The atmospheric pressure has dropped to levels that would kill an unprotected human in seconds, and it continues to fall as gases are continuously stripped away. The temperature fluctuates wildly with no stable atmosphere to regulate it, freezing in the darkness and scorching where sunlight still penetrates. The final evacuation attempt is made in these last hours. A handful of spacecraft, loaded with as many survivors as they can carry and as much critical data as their storage banks can hold, attempt to break through the bioship blockade. Most are destroyed immediately, swatted from the sky by the hive ship's weapons before they can even reach orbit. A few manage to evade, their pilots using every trick they know to thread through the massive bioconstructs. One transport, carrying several thousand menials and a collection of data cores containing Forge World records, actually reaches the system's edge. Its crew believes they have succeeded, that they will be able to translate into the warp and escape. But the shadow in the warp extends far beyond the immediate vicinity of the hive fleet, and when they attempt to activate their warp engines, the machine spirits scream in digital agony and fail. The ship is hunted down by a group of smaller bioships, cornered in the outer system and boarded. What happens to its crew and passengers is mercifully not recorded, but the ship itself is eventually consumed, its materials added to the hive fleet's mass. On the surface, the fighting continues until there is simply nothing left to fight with. The last organized resistance collapses when the final ammunition storehouse is overrun, leaving survivors with nothing but hand-to-hand weapons against an enemy that excels at close combat. The last communication from the Forge Cathedral is a simple binary burst. The Omnissiah endures, then silence, aftermath, the husk that remains. The bioships continue their feeding for several more weeks after organized resistance ends. There are still pockets of biomass to be extracted, still water locked in deep aquifers, still atmosphere to be harvested. The capillary towers that remain continue their work, though their number dwindles as they too are eventually consumed and recycled. Eventually, the flow of resources begins to slow. The easily accessible biomass has been processed. The water is gone. The aquifers drained to the last drop. The atmosphere has thinned to a trace, barely enough to call it an atmosphere at all. The hive mind runs its calculations and determines that further investment of resources in harvesting this world would yield diminishing returns. The decision is made to depart. The last capillary towers are consumed, broken down by ripper swarms that then themselves throw themselves into the few remaining reclamation pools. These pools are pumped dry, their contents transported to orbit, and then the pools themselves are collapsed and filled in with rubble. The alien vegetation, already mostly consumed, is finished off, leaving behind no trace of its existence. The smaller bioships, the Krakens and Razor Fiends that have been conducting surface operations, begin to ascend, their holds full of processed material and new genetic information. They rise through the thin atmosphere and return to the larger hive ships, docking with the massive bioconstructs in a process that is as much biological merger as it is conventional docking. The larger bioships begin to disengage from their orbital positions, their feeding complete. They carry within their bodies thousands upon thousands of tons of biomass, liquefied and stored in specialized organs, ready to be used to spawn new bioforms or sustain the fleet during its journey to the next target. Behind them, they leave a world transformed beyond recognition. Where once stood a thriving forge world, a center of industry and learning, a bastion of the Mechanicus faith, there is now only lifeless rock. The surface is scoured clean, stripped down to bedrock in most places. The great forge complexes are gone, demolished so thoroughly that archaeologists would be hard-pressed to prove they ever existed. The hablocks, the shrines, the landing fields, the manufactoria, all of it erased. There is no atmosphere to speak of, just trace gases that will eventually dissipate into space. There is no water anywhere on or in the world. The temperature on the sunward side reaches extremes that would vaporize lead, while the night side freezes to temperatures not far above absolute zero. Nothing lives here anymore. Nothing can live here. The world is dead in the most absolute sense, a corpse of a planet orbiting through space, its substance stolen, its future erased. In the months and years that follow, if Imperial forces eventually return to this system, they will find this dead world and attempt to piece together what happened. Auger scans will reveal the absence of life, the geological scars that suggest massive excavation, the chemical traces that indicate biological activity on a scale difficult to comprehend. Investigation teams might land, protected by sealed suits and carrying specialized equipment, and they will walk across a surface as dead as any airless moon. They might find remnants, fragments of adamantium that resisted even Tyranid digestive processes, pieces of debris too insignificant for the hive fleet to bother collecting. From these scraps, they might piece together some understanding of what this world once was. But they will find no survivors, no last defenders clinging to life in sealed bunkers, no populations that manage to hide deep enough to avoid discovery. The Tyranids are thorough in their consumption, and they do not leave prey alive if they can avoid it. Every human on this world is dead, their biomass added to the hive fleet, their genetic information incorporated into the Tyranid genetic database, their memories and knowledge extracted at the cellular level and absorbed into the hive mind's vast intelligence. The Titan legions that defended this world, those proud god machines that fought with such distinction, are gone. Not destroyed in any conventional sense, but consumed. Their adamantium bones dissolved in acids potent enough to break down even that legendary material. Their machine spirits silenced forever, their crews dead and devoured. The loss of even a single Titan is a tragedy that echoes through the Mechanicus for centuries. The loss of an entire Titan legion is a wound that may never fully heal. The Forge World's archives, the accumulated knowledge of thousands of years, are lost unless copies exist elsewhere. All the manufacturing specifications, the technical documentation, the sacred rites and procedures that were unique to this world, gone. The Mechanicus jealously guards its knowledge, often keeping certain techniques or designs secret, even from other Forge Worlds. When a Forge World falls, that unique knowledge dies with it, and perhaps most tragically, the people themselves are gone. Not just the Skitarii warriors or the tech priests, though their loss is significant, but also the countless billions of menials whose lives were defined by labor, but who were nonetheless human, who had families and dreams and fears. All of them dead, all of them consumed, reduced to their component molecules and distributed among the bioforms of the hive fleet. This is what it means when a Forge World falls to the Tyranids. It is not merely a military defeat or a loss of territory. It is extinction on a planetary scale, the complete erasure of a civilization and all it represented. The Forge World fought well, resisted with all its considerable might, deployed weapons that could have defeated any conventional foe. And it was not enough, because the Tyranids are not conventional foes. The hive fleet that consumed this world, having fed and grown stronger, moves on to its next target. Perhaps it splits into multiple tendrils, each seeking new worlds to devour. Perhaps it joins with other elements of the fleet, combining resources for an assault on a more heavily defended target. Wherever it goes, it carries with it the biomass of this dead world, and that biomass will be used to create new horrors, new bioforms spawned from the genetic material of those who tried to resist. Some of those bioforms might incorporate adaptations derived from the Mechanicus themselves, warriors with carapaces reinforced with metallized compounds, designed to better resist the plasma weapons the defenders used so effectively. Flying organisms with organs that can detect electromagnetic emissions, making them better hunters of technology-dependent foes. Burrowing creatures with acid glands, enhanced by the formula extracted from dissolved industrial compounds. The Tyranids learn, they adapt, and every world they consume makes them stronger, more capable, more dangerous. This Forge World's fall contributes to the Great Devourer's evolution, becomes part of the vast databank of genetic information that the hive mind draws upon. The next Forge World to face this fleet, if there is a next one, will face bioforms that have been specifically adapted to overcome the defenses that worked here. This is the true horror of the Tyranids. They are not just a threat to individual worlds or sectors. They are a threat to the entire galaxy, an enemy that becomes more dangerous with every victory, that learns from every engagement, that cannot be reasoned with or deterred. They are hunger incarnate, and every world they consume feeds that hunger while making them better able to satisfy it. The known fallen, Forge Worlds consumed. The fall of this unnamed Forge World, detailed in its grim progression, is not an isolated incident. It is a pattern that has been repeated across the galaxy as the Tyranid hive fleets continue their inexorable advance into Imperial space. While the Mechanicus is often reluctant to admit the loss of any Forge world, viewing such admissions as near heretical acknowledgement of failure, certain falls have been too significant to hide or have been documented too thoroughly to deny. Forge world Arcetri stands as perhaps the most documented case of Tyranid consumption of a Mechanicus world. Part of Arch-Magos Lexel-Kotov's domain, Arcetri was attacked and consumed by a tendril of Hive Fleet Harbinger. The assault came as a shock to Kotov, who had assumed that Forge worlds, with their minimal organic biomass and vast defensive arrays, would be overlooked by the Tyranids in favor of more biologically rich targets. This assumption proved catastrophically wrong. The Hive fleet that descended upon Arcetri demonstrated capabilities that horrified the few observers who survived to report on it. The Tyranids did not simply consume the population and vegetation. They demonstrated the ability to process and incorporate metals into their bioforms, creating warriors with metallized carapaces that were significantly more resistant to Imperial weaponry than standard Tyranid organisms. The reports from Arcetri's fall, compiled from fragmentary Vox recordings and data recovered from ships that escaped the system, describe a consumption process similar to what we have discussed, but with some unique elements. The Tyranids apparently focused significant resources on consuming the Forge world's promethium, refineries, suggesting the hive mind recognized the energy-rich compounds as valuable resources. Tech priests in the spawning pools created creatures with enhanced thermal resistance and the ability to metabolize petrochemical compounds. Portions of the Griffin 4 Forge World complex fell to Hive Fleet Leviathan, though the world's ultimate fate remains unclear in current records. What is known is that the assault was massive in scale, with estimates of over 100 million bioforms deployed in the initial waves alone. The Titan Legion, based on Griffono 4, Legio Griffonicus, mounted a defense that has become legendary in Mechanicus circles, but even their valor could not prevent partial conquest of the world. The assault on Griffono 4 demonstrated another horrifying Tyranid capability, the ability to adapt their bioforms in near real time to counter specific threats. When the defenders employed their famous plasma weapons in the early stages of the battle, subsequent waves of Tyranid organisms showed enhanced resistance to thermal damage. When heavy armor was brought to bear, the Tyranids responded with bioforms sporting enhanced penetration capacity on their bioweapons. Other Forge worlds have fallen or come close to falling. The records are often fragmentary, as Forge worlds under assault frequently lose communication capacity as the shadow in the warp intensifies. Some worlds are listed simply as lost to Xenos attack in Mechanicus records, with no details about whether the attack succeeded or how the defenders fared. This obscurity makes it difficult to quantify exactly how many Forge worlds have been lost to the Tyranids, but the number is certainly higher than the Mechanicus officially acknowledges. Each loss represents not merely the destruction of a world, but the permanent reduction of the Imperium's manufacturing capacity. Forge worlds take centuries or millennia to fully develop, their production facilities representing investments of resources and knowledge accumulated over vast spans of time. When one falls, it cannot be quickly replaced. The loss cascades through the Imperium, as the worlds that relied on that Forge world for weapons, ammunition, and equipment find their supplies dwindling. Moreover, each Forge world that falls to the Tyranids potentially makes subsequent attacks more dangerous. The genetic information harvested from Skitarii warriors, tech priests, and specialized Forge world organisms adds to the hive mind's database. Forge world-specific technologies and adaptations can be incorporated into future bioforms. The Tyranids become more effective at conquering specifically these types of heavily defended, technologically sophisticated worlds. The strategic implications of this cannot be overstated. Forge worlds are not merely production centers. They are the anchors around which entire sectors of Imperial space organize themselves. They supply the weapons that arm the Astra Militarum, the ships that compose, the Imperial Navy, the munitions that let Space Marine chapters conduct their campaigns. Lose enough Forge worlds, and the Imperium's ability to wage war across the galaxy begins to erode. This is perhaps the Tyranids' most insidious threat. They don't need to conquer Terra or Holy Mars to win. They simply need to consume enough worlds, harvest enough resources, to tip the balance to the point where the Imperium can no longer sustain its defenses. And every Forge world that falls accelerates this timeline, both by reducing Imperial capacity and by increasing Tyranid capability. The Mechanicus is aware of this danger. In the highest councils on Mars, when the Fabricator General meets with the other senior Archmagoi, the conversation inevitably turns to the question of the Tyranid threat and what can be done to counter it. Proposals are made for new defensive doctrines, for research into anti-Tyranid weapons, for strategies to evacuate critical knowledge before a Forge world falls. But fundamentally, the problem may not have a solution. The Tyranids are, by their very nature, an enemy that adapts and evolves. Any defense developed today becomes less effective tomorrow as the hive mind learns and spawns bioforms capable of countering it. Any weapon that proves effective will be met with organic armor that resists it. Any tactic that succeeds will be anticipated in the next engagement. This adaptive capacity means that the long-term prognosis for Forge worlds, indeed for all worlds in the path of the hive fleets, is grim. Unless some fundamental weakness of the Tyranids can be identified and exploited, unless some weapon or strategy can be developed that they cannot adapt to counter, the Great Devourer will continue its advance. And every world it consumes, every Forge world brought low, every planet stripped of life makes the next conquest easier. Conclusion: lessons from the Fallen. The consumption of a Forge world by Tyranid forces represents one of the Imperium's most catastrophic types of defeat. Unlike other losses, where a world might be reclaimed, populations liberated, or infrastructure rebuilt, a world consumed by the Tyranids is lost absolutely and forever. There is no reconquest because there is nothing left to reclaim. The world itself has been fundamentally altered, transformed from a living planet into a lifeless rock, devoid of anything that might support human habitation. For the Adeptus Mechanicus specifically, these losses cut deeper than simple strategic setback. Each Forge world represents millennia of accumulated knowledge, unique technologies, and sacred rites that cannot be replicated elsewhere. The machine spirits that animate Forge world equipment, developed and nurtured over centuries, are destroyed beyond any possibility of recovery. The Titan legions that stand guard over these worlds, relics whose loss echoes through the Mechanicus for generations, are consumed and erased. Perhaps most devastating is the loss of knowledge. The Mechanicus hoards information, often keeping critical technologies or techniques secret, even from other Forge worlds. When a Forge world falls completely, as it does in Tyranid attacks, that unique knowledge dies with it. Future generations will never know what was lost, what capabilities the Imperium once possessed, that are now gone forever. The strategic implications extend beyond the immediate military situation. The Tyranids don't merely defeat Forge worlds, they harvest them, extracting not only biomass, but also metals, minerals, water, and atmosphere. They learn from what they consume, incorporating genetic information into their database and spawning new bioforms that are better adapted to fighting future enemies. Every Forge world that falls makes the Hive fleet stronger and the Imperium weaker in a cycle that potentially accelerates toward inevitable conclusion. But perhaps the most important lesson from these fallen worlds is one about hubris. Many Forge worlds fell because their tech priests believed that their worlds of steel and machinery would be passed over, that enemies seeking biomass would find easier prey elsewhere. This assumption, logical as it seemed, was based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what the Tyranids are and how they operate. The Tyranids are not merely biological, they are reality consumers, capable of breaking down and incorporating virtually any form of matter into their endless swarms. A Forge world represents resources just as valuable as any garden world, perhaps more so because of the concentrated metals and rare minerals that are otherwise difficult to obtain. The hive mind calculates worth not in terms of ease of conquest, but in terms of total extractable resources. And by that measure, forge worlds are excellent targets. For those who defend these worlds, for the Skitarii and tech priests and titan legions who stand against the swarm, there is no comfort in these lessons. They fight knowing that defeat is likely, that survival is improbable, that their names will be forgotten and their sacrifices unremembered except as data points in statistical analysis. They fight anyway because it is their duty, because the alternative is to surrender without resistance, because even in the face of extinction, humanity must rage against the dying of the light. And they do extract a price. No forge world falls easily. The Tyranids pay in biomass and bioforms, spending resources that must be recovered through further consumption. The defenders make the enemy bleed, even if that blood takes the form of ichor and alien flesh. They destroy bioships, kill biotitans, and slow the advance enough that sometimes, just sometimes, evacuation efforts succeed and survivors escape to warn others. These survivors carry with them knowledge of how the Tyranids operate, tactical information that might help other worlds mount better defenses. They preserve fragments of Forge world culture and technology, ensuring that not everything is lost. They serve as testament to the fact that even the great devourer can be resisted, that humanity need not go quietly into obliteration. But resistance without victory is ultimately futile on the strategic level. The Tyranids will continue to come. New hive fleets are constantly arriving from the intergalactic void, drawn by the psychic beacon of life in the galaxy. They will continue to consume, to harvest, to transform living worlds into dead husks. And unless the Imperium finds some way to strike at the hive fleet's source, unless some weakness can be found and exploited, the consumption will continue until there is nothing left to consume. This is the nightmare that keeps the Fabricator General awake in those hours when even augmented bodies must rest. This is the calculation that tech priests run obsessively, searching for some variable that might change the outcome. This is the reality that every defender of every Forge world must face. They are fighting not for victory, but simply to make defeat more expensive, to slow the inevitable, to buy a little more time for humanity's flickering light to persist in the darkness. And time, as the consumed Forge worlds demonstrate, is rapidly running out. The Tyranids are patient because they are inevitable. They will come, they will consume, and when they leave, nothing remains but silence and empty stone, monuments to civilizations that fought valiantly but could not, in the end, resist the hunger of the Great Devourer. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of Warhammer 40k's darkest scenarios, consider subscribing to Stories of Hammer for more detailed explorations of the grim darkness of the far future. Hit that like button and let us know in the comments which aspect of Tyranid invasions you'd like us to cover next. Until next time, remember, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, and sometimes that war is one we cannot win.